So let's look at that. This is topic CIDR, which is very important topic for the exam. So this is again covering some of the networking concepts. And if you're not from a networking background, this is a bit difficult to understand. I've tried to explain this in a simpler manner, and which I would say I did not find it in any of the classes available online or any book. But I've tried to do simplify it. So CIDR. So first, let us understand what is CIDR. Okay. So first, let us understand what is our domain name system. In the old days when the internet was launched in 1993, so there is a group called the Internet Engineering Task Force. So they created IP4 standards in 1993, and that was using classful routing systems. So there, for now, just uh, assume there are two ways of routing: classful and classless. The way the classful was routing is through the usage of the DNS names, and because of that, there was lack of scalability. You cannot scale beyond a certain limit. And now, if you see, there are a lot of laptops, desktops, mobile phones, iPads, etc. So it is very difficult to keep scaling using this mechanism, and that's the reason this CIDR, that is classless inter-domain routing. This is a full form of CIDR, classless inter-domain routing. This was created as a system of routing IP4 addresses. What was the prime reason? Scalability. You can keep on adding more and more devices, and it is scalable. But what is happening is even the IP4 addresses, these are getting exhausted. So in the recent years, you might have seen, or in the coming days, you might see IP v6 standards being used, because with so much of augmentation of the devices in the network, uh, the addresses are getting exhausted. Now let us understand what are the components of CIDR. CIDR has two components: base IP and the host identifier. That is the device of the computer. Okay. So the base IP is a standard IP like 10.0.0.0, something of that sort. So what happens is, these IPs, consider your internet service provider. Okay. So for example, if you're in India, you have Airtel, Jio. If you're in US, you have maybe T-Mobile, or some other company there. So what's happening is these companies are getting blocks of IP address allocated to them. So for example, if I have a Geo broadband service, so Geo got a block of IP addresses, maybe 10 million or 100 million addresses. And then Geo gives the customer, suppose I have one connection from Geo, so I get one IP. If I have multiple connections, if I'm running a small business and I need multiple connections, so they give me a small block for my business. Similarly, if you're working in a big organization, then the internet service provider must have given a range of IPs, a full block of some of the IPs. So what's happening is, like I told, IP4 addresses are exhausting, and the recent days you will see IPv6 being launched. Now let us take an example, like how this calculation of IPs work. Okay, and this is important. Please pay attention to this one. So suppose the base IP is 192.168.0.0. Okay, and the subnet is /32. What does this mean? There is a simple formula if you want to calculate the range of IPs. So what you have to do is, in the above example, you have to minus the subnet from 32. That is, 32 is the base number. 32 minus this 32. That is 0. And hence, how many IPs? 2 raised to 0. That is 1 IP. So if you always if you see slash 32, that means uh, the range is 1. Similarly, in the next example, if you see slash 24, so you minus 32, 24 from 32, you get 8, 2 is to 8 is 256. This will give you 256 IPs. So formula is simple, right? You have to minus this subnet from 32. Let's see one more example. If we use subnet 0, what will happen? So what happens is this case the subnet is 0. It will you have to do 32 minus 0 is 32. That's all IPs. That is, you see 32 minus 0 32, and hence you do a 2 raised to 32. That is approximately, I think, 6556, something of that sort, all IPs. So if it is slash 32, point to be noted, slash 32, that is one IP, slash 0, all IPs. Now let us look at uh, cheat sheet. So this cheat sheet is very important, and that is very useful for the exam. So if you have slash 32, then no IP number can change. What does this mean is, if you have slash 32, that means only one IP. So on this one, nothing will change. Okay. But if you have slash 24, last IP can change. Last IP means this dot zero, this will change if it is slash 24. If it is slash 16, the last two numbers can change. That is, slash 16 means 0 and 0 will become 255 and 255, something of that sort. That can change. And if slash 8, then three numbers can change. That is, these three numbers can change. Okay. And if it is slash 0, then all IP numbers can change. What we mean by all is these all four. Everything can change if it is slash 0. This is a quick cheat sheet. Memorize this for the exam. This is important. So let's look at this topic of what is Internet Assigned Numbers Authority, IANA. So this authority assigns blocks of IP to public and private addresses. So this institution name is IANA. Now private IP only allows certain values, private IPs, these three, like starting from 10.0.0. This is for big networks. Like if you have a big corporate and you want to set that up, it's for big networks. Similarly, 172.16.0.0 is for default AWS 1. So within AWS, whatever communication happens, and if you have to use an IP, so this is what it starts with. And if you're at home, if you have done an IP config and seen the IP, chances are it starts with 192 or 168. So this is your home network, for your home network. So only these IPs starting with these can be used as private networks.